You're watching Telecom TV from the SDN World Congress event 2016 from The Hague. I'm joined now by Martin Taylor, who is CTO at Metaswitch. Martin, thanks for joining us again on Telecom TV.
Pleasure.
We're going to look at the development of NFV, network functions, virtualization, and how it really impacts other aspects of our business. And the one I really want to start with is the Internet of Things. Is there a correlation between NFV and IoT?
I think it's as simple as this. If you're building something new out, you're creating some new network capability or some new software capability, then you're going to do it in a virtualized way. So, I mean, anybody that's doing anything new now in the networking space, and IoT is obviously a big area for that, is going to do it in using the tools and the techniques and the approach that NFV brings.
And what about 5G? Because as we start the journey, we've already started the journey towards 5G, and especially the re-architecting of the network itself. Mm-hmm. Will 5G be a key enabler? Will NFV be a key enabler of 5G? Do you have to have NFV in place in order to start rolling out 5G?
Well, I mean, in principle, I guess you could do stuff in the traditional old way, but no one wants to buy that approach. So, I mean, in practice, everybody who's going to do anything new in this space is going to be doing it with NFV as the fundamental assumption that they're working with. 5G, of course, opens up some interesting new use cases, and the relationship between 5G and IoT is interesting. We're going to have some low power, low bandwidth radio stuff going on. And network slicing for all that's great. In our space, I mean, there's an impact there as well. I mean, we're primarily concerned with real-time communications. Mm-hmm. People say, well, how does that play in IoT? There are some real IoT use cases where you need voice, video, messaging, communications. An example is connected car. People think of connected car as telematics and navigation, that kind of thing, but there will be a button on the dashboard, call the concierge or call emergency services. You need real-time communications for that. And if you're doing it in a telco standard way, which people will, you'll build an IMS for that. Now, one of the nice things about virtualization is, particularly the cloud-native approach we've taken to virtualizing IMS, you can build a specialized IMS for that kind of application, kind of sandbox it off from the rest of your voice network, scale it in the right way to suit the particular needs of that app, and do that very efficiently and very quickly. So that's a real benefit of the virtualization brings.
A couple of things you said there we had to pick up on. Cloud native approach. Mm-hmm. What's so special about a cloud native approach?
That's about building and designing software specifically for a cloud environment. And people say, well, so how's that different from what other people are doing? What most other people are doing is they're working with the software that they've had for many years running on appliances, and they're adapting that so it's capable of running in a cloud environment. But software designed for a cloud environment tends to look very different in its overall architecture, decomposed into microservices, scaling out and scaling in. So everything, lots of virtual machines all running in parallel, but interchangeably so. There's this concept of stateless processing and separate state stores. These are architectural patterns which have become very common on the web, completely alien to most telco equipment vendors, and we've done a great job of kind of bridging the gap there. Taking these cloud native techniques, but then bringing them to telco standards like IMS and all the 3GPP specs that surround it.
The other thing you mentioned there was network slicing and creating slices for certain applications and use cases. Mm-hmm. Is this something inherent within SDN? It comes for free, if you like, out of virtualization. I mean, once you virtualize something, then you can create multiple copies of it, if you like, which was impossible in the bad old days. And of course, that made for that really slowed down service innovation because people were very reluctant to risk deploying a whole bunch of new applications on their core IMS that may be running, all of their consumer voice services, voice over LTE and so on. With virtualization, you can stand up a dedicated IMS for a particular purpose without any risk, if you like, to your mainstream applications. Another topic that we're hearing about, certainly the past 12 months, we're increasingly hearing about, is the use of containers and containerization. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Okay, so containers is a different way of deploying software in a virtualized form than the virtual machine, which is the sort of more traditional way. So we tend to think of virtualization as having sort of two generations. And the way people are doing things at the moment in NFV with virtual machines, that's how IT departments took dedicated servers running, Exchange server and SQL server and all that sort of stuff, and ran it on shared machines. That's kind of virtualization 1.0, if you like. People who are writing software from scratch for a cloud environment, they're starting from, there's a different starting point here. This is not taking something that ran on hardware and running it now in a virtualized environment. This is designing stuff from scratch for virtualization. So, I talked about cloud native as a different approach. Containers is an approach to packaging that software and enabling you to deploy it on a cloud that's much better tuned, if you like, for software that was written for the cloud in the first place than software that was originally written to run on specialized hardware. So we think of it as kind of virtualization 2.0, and that's why there's so much talk about it now, because people see this is really the way ahead.
So it's an alternative to a virtual machine approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's lighter weight. It involves much less overhead. And these things spin up extremely quickly. They're inherently much easier to orchestrate. There are a lot of orchestration solutions already around containers that are very sophisticated. They take care of scaling and healing and load balancing and all the things that are hard and complicated to do in a virtual machine world. That's all done with containers already. So it gets you there a lot more quickly. But the snag is not all software can be deployed in containers. If you wrote cloud native, then containers are easy. If you took software from some physical appliance, an ATCA chassis or something, and try and containerize it, you'll probably not be able to do it because the technical, characteristics of the software just don't lend themselves to containerization.
So as we start introducing all these new approaches and adding complexity to our telecoms networks, telcos, network operators are starting to roll out NFV solutions. We've been speaking to a few leading operators who are doing so. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that still seems to be a bit of a problem surrounds virtual network functions and how you actually onboard these. There just seem to be problems with interoperability of VNFs.
Yeah, sure. So this really it comes back to, did the software start out live on an appliance or was it designed for the cloud? If it started out live on an appliance, then the way that you bring that software to life and the way that you could fix it and scale it and all that sort of thing involves a lot of manual operations. You connect into a command line interface. You type in a whole series of commands. You have the manual open in front of you. Type this in, add this, put this parameter in here, and so on. The onboarding process is all about automating that. Okay, so you've got this very complex set of kind of startup instructions, which you have to try and automate. And in practice, that means extending the orchestrator, handcrafting a whole bunch of scripts, lots of debugging. You're creating a whole raft of additional software, if you like, just to do that onboarding process. The cloud native approach, on the other hand, that software is inherently designed to be easy to deploy, easy to orchestrate. And if it's containerized, a lot of that stuff sort of comes for free anyway. So our experience has been we can bring stuff up, get it onboarded in a matter of days, compared with weeks or typically months for most of the other VNFs that we've looked at. But I think you're right. I mean, this is one of the big areas of friction right now in getting NFV deployed. We hear constantly, this is the constant refrain, it's really hard to onboard stuff.
Is it a case of an interim period where we're still porting from physical appliances and at the same time writing new code?
I think that's probably the case, yes. I think everybody recognizes that it would be nice if we had stuff that was designed for the cloud in the first place. We were lucky to have started that journey, 4 or 5 years ago now, and so we're well down the path. We have huge sympathy for vendors who've got a ton of code that was written for the appliance era, and now wrestling with, well, how do you adapt that for the cloud? The problem is that cloud native architectures are so fundamentally different from appliance architectures from a software standpoint. You can't just put some wrapping around this thing, or it involves picking the software apart line by line almost. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, and so we expect that what will have to happen over time is brand new products will have to come out, which are written specifically for the cloud that replicate the functionality, but do so now in this cloud native way. Now that's a huge undertaking, and it's well, where's the business case, right? Well,
Sure.
makes it a bit easier to onboard. Yeah, okay, but so that's the dilemma I think the industry is in right now. Over time, I think you will see more and more of these cloud native products, because what we're expecting is ultimately, if you have a cloud native product, you have a huge competitive advantage over someone that doesn't. So that's a pretty important spur, right, to getting
Sure.
people on that
Sure.
journey.
Martin, fascinating. For now, though, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.